Around 3:15 in the afternoon on August 26, 1998, 17-year-old Chen Hui Min returned from school to her family's apartment at Block 467, Tampines Street 44, Singapore. As soon as she stepped out of the elevator on the 8th floor, she saw a trail of blood running along the corridor and leading directly to Unit 140. The outer metal gate stood wide open, with the metal padlock still hanging loosely from the chain. Inside, the living room was in disarray, suggesting that a violent struggle had taken place. Bloody shoe prints led from the kitchen, across the living room, down all 8 flights of stairs, and disappeared at parking space 34 behind Block 469. In the small bathroom beside the kitchen, her 50-year-old mother, Eng Yan, was lying collapsed on the floor. Her body was beside a red plastic basin positioned beneath a tap that was still running. A later forensic examination documented a total of 58 injuries on her body. The family's accumulated savings, consisting of 2,200 Singapore dollars in banknotes and more than 4,400 Singapore dollars in coins, had been taken from the apartment. Within 5 days, investigators had identified and arrested a suspect, Lau Lee Peng, a 46-year-old fish seller whose stall was directly beside the victims at Tampines Market. Fresh cuts on Lau's hands and feet, combined with bags of coins weighing tens of kilograms that were recovered from a rented truck, appeared to form a powerful chain of evidence linking him to the killing and the theft. But the 1998 Tampines murder case did not end with physical evidence. It entered Singapore legal history as a major case, involving the conflict between forensic evidence, financial motive, and a defense based on the exception of sudden and grave provocation under the Penal Code. The case took place in Tampines, a rapidly developing residential satellite town in Singapore during the 1990s. Much of the local community and commercial activity centered on the traditional market at Block 475, Tampines Street 43. It was an environment where working-class residents, food vendors, and informal financial practices frequently intersected. Within this social setting, 2 forms of financial activity often overlapped and could add directly to the pressures behind criminal behavior: widespread horse racing gambling tied to illegal lending, and tontine savings groups used as informal community financing. When the organizer of a tontine disappeared after defaulting, the collapse could leave small traders trapped in cascading debts, with little hope of recovery. The victim, Eng Yan, was born in 1948 and was 50 years old when she was killed. She was also known as Lily, or Tan Ah Leng. In the mornings, she worked as an assistant at a fruit stall in the Tampines Market at Block 475, and in the afternoons, she also worked as a freelance hairdresser. She lived with her husband, Tan Cheng Guan, and her daughter, Chen Hui Min, in an 8th-floor apartment at Block 467, Tampines Street 44. Co-workers and relatives described Tan as friendly and outgoing, but she also had a habit of speaking openly about her personal finances. She often carried large amounts of cash in her handbag and did not hesitate to tell people around her about the substantial savings she kept inside her apartment, including thousands of dollars in both coins and banknotes. Lau Lee Peng, who was 46 when he was arrested in 1998, sold fish at a stall directly beside Tan's fruit stall. Lau and Tan had been on friendly terms for about 3 years, with no known public disputes or conflicts before the killing. But behind his daily work at the fish stall, Lau had fallen into a serious financial crisis, driven by gambling, especially horse racing bets. He borrowed money from many sources, including fellow market vendors, illegal money lenders, and Eng Yan herself. One factor that placed additional pressure on Lau's finances involved a 17-member tontine organized by Phi Sai Po, commonly known as Po, beginning in August 1996. According to Lau's testimony, he contributed about 500 Singapore dollars each month and had paid roughly 10,000 Singapore dollars into the tontine in total, but had recovered only a small portion of that money. By early 1998, Apo had run into financial trouble, stopped operating the tontine, and later went into hiding without revealing her new address. In court, Apo testified that she still owed Lau about 4,000 Singapore dollars. At the same time, Lau had several other debts and had suffered losses from horse racing bets, causing his financial pressure to mount steadily. Tan Eng Yan's morning work at the Tampines market usually ended at around 1 in the afternoon. On August 26, 1998, Lau Lee Peng approached her and went with her to her 8th-floor apartment at Block 467. In Lau's later statements, he claimed that his original reason for going there was to ask for Apo's new address, because Tan had previously told him that she had it. The killing took place inside the closed apartment sometime between 1 and 2:30 that afternoon. When Chen Hui Min arrived home at 3:15 in the afternoon and noticed the blood trail along the corridor, she entered a scene filled with signs of a violent struggle. The crime scene examination that followed allowed police to reconstruct much of what had happened inside the apartment. The inner wooden door was still open, while the outer metal gate had not been fully closed, and the padlock was hanging loosely from the chain. Significantly, there were no signs that the lock had been broken or that forced entry had occurred, making it important that the victim may have opened the door herself for someone she knew. Inside the apartment, the trail clearly showed how the person had moved through the scene before leaving. Bloody shoe prints began in the kitchen, continued through the living room and out the front door, then ran down all 8 flights of stairs before ending at parking space 34 behind Block 469. The trail indicated that the person leaving the apartment had used the stairs rather than the elevator, and most likely left the area from the parking lot. The living room and kitchen also showed multiple signs of a struggle. A ceramic vase had been smashed, leaving fragments scattered across the floor. At the kitchen sink, police recovered a large kitchen cleaver, with blood still on both the blade and the handle. In the small bathroom beside the kitchen, Tan Eng Yan's body was found lying face down on the floor. Her head was completely inside a red plastic basin placed beneath a tap that was still running. An inventory of the apartment revealed another important detail. The money Tan had stored inside the home was gone. According to the case record, a total of 6,600 Singapore dollars had been taken, including $2,200 in banknotes and $4,400 in coins in denominations of 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents, and $1. The volume of coins was so large that they had been divided among several separate bags, a detail that later became an important link in the search for the suspect. The autopsy, conducted by forensic pathologist Dr. Wee Keng Po, showed that the attack had been even more severe than the scene initially suggested. The forensic record documented numerous injuries across Tan's body, mainly chop wounds and cuts caused by a heavy, sharp object consistent with the type of cleaver recovered from the apartment. Among those injuries, the wounds to the neck were especially severe, along with serious injuries to the wrists and forearms. Some of the wounds were severe enough that they could have been fatal on their own. The injuries to Tan's hands also showed that she had raised them in an attempt to defend herself during the attack, consistent with a close-range struggle. The cause of death was determined to be acute blood loss from multiple severe chop wounds. The position of the victim's head inside the basin of water was not considered the primary cause of death. The forensic findings indicated that this occurred after Tan had already lost the ability to resist. When investigators put together everything they had at that point, one possibility became increasingly clear: the attacker may also have been injured. The investigation began to shift from the question of what had happened inside the apartment to the more important question of who within Tan's circle of acquaintances could fit the evidence. Based on the continuous blood trail running from the 8th-floor apartment down to the parking lot, the Criminal Investigation Department of the Singapore Police Force reached an important technical conclusion. While violently swinging the cleaver at the victim, the attacker had likely injured himself and bled significantly. Investigators immediately began reviewing Tan's social connections at the Tampines market at Block 475, looking for anyone with recent injuries. Within 5 days, police had called in and questioned dozens of market vendors. On August 31, 1998, investigators took a statement from Lau Lee Peng. During the interview, officers noticed several very fresh cuts on his body. These included sharp wounds to his right big toe and right foot, as well as a deep cut on his right hand involving the index finger, middle finger, and the area between them. A medical examination determined that these injuries had been sustained around the same time as the killing. Soon afterward, Dr. Chua Seo Yam of Singapore's Institute of Science and Forensic Medicine conducted genetic testing. DNA extracted from bloodstains on the floor and along the corridor of the apartment matched Lau Lee Peng's DNA profile. Confronted with the evidence from his injuries and the DNA results, Lau Lee Peng confessed and led investigators to where he had hidden the stolen property. At a parking lot at Block 96, Havelock Road, police recovered a Suzuki truck with the license plate GH5364S that Lau had rented. Inside the vehicle, officers found 6 plastic bags filled with coins hidden behind the driver's seat, along with a 7th bag of coins concealed beneath the truck's air conditioning unit. On October 23, 1998, police recovered 2 more bags of coins from Chua Seong Huat, the owner of the rental vehicle. Chua confirmed that on August 28, Lau Lee Peng had used those same 2 bags of coins to pay 400 Singapore dollars in outstanding rental fees. The total amount recovered matched the 6,600 Singapore dollars taken from the apartment. In his initial statements to investigators, including the statement marked Exhibit P-168, Lau Lee Peng tried to reduce his own responsibility by inventing a Malaysian accomplice named Meng. Lau claimed that he and Meng had gone to the apartment to get Po's address. According to this version, when an argument broke out, Meng was the one who grabbed Tan around the neck and restrained her. Lau then claimed that Meng forced the victim's head into the basin of water in the bathroom before the 2 men searched the apartment and divided the stolen money between them. During the initial forensic analysis, investigators did detect a third party's DNA at the scene, so the possibility of an accomplice was briefly considered. But under intensive questioning, and after investigators identified inconsistencies in the timeline and the claimed route of movement, Lau Lee Peng was forced to admit that Meng did not exist. He had invented the character in an attempt to shift part of the blame away from himself. Lau admitted that he alone had carried out the killing and taken the stolen property. On September 2, 1998, Lau Lee Peng was formally charged in court with murder under Section 300 of the Singapore Penal Code. The trial opened in the Singapore High Court on November 1, 1999. The prosecution argued that this was a calculated and violent robbery, driven by financial desperation caused by gambling debts. Lau Lee Peng knew that Eng Yan had a habit of keeping large amounts of cash and coins at home. To challenge Lau's explanation that he had gone to the apartment to obtain Po's address, the prosecution called Phi Sai Po herself to testify. On the witness stand, Po testified that she had never told Eng Yan her new address after going into hiding from her debts. Tan therefore could not have had the piece of paper containing the address that Lau claimed he had gone there to collect. Po also confirmed that Lau had never pursued the debt as aggressively as he later described. The prosecution argued that Lau had fabricated the story about the address as a reason to enter the apartment, then killed the victim with 58 chop wounds to eliminate her as a witness and steal her property. Faced with physical evidence he could not realistically deny, defense lawyer Subhas Anandan did not dispute that Lau Lee Peng had caused Tan's death. Instead, the defense focused on reducing the charge from murder to culpable homicide not amounting to murder. The defense strategy relied on Exception 1 to Section 300 of the Singapore Penal Code, sudden and grave provocation, and Exception 4, sudden fight. At trial, Lau Lee Peng presented an entirely new account that had never appeared in his earlier police statements. He testified that when Tan failed to find the piece of paper containing Po's address, a heated argument broke out. Lau accused Tan of deeply insulting his mother and mocking him as a fool for allowing women to take his money. Lau testified that Tan threatened to kill him, reached for the cleaver in the kitchen sink, and first attacked him with a broken piece of the ceramic vase. He claimed that in a state of panic, having completely lost self-control, he took the cleaver from her and repeatedly attacked her. Lau insisted that he only took the money afterward, as an impulsive act after the victim was already dead. Prosecutor David Lee pointed to several critical contradictions. In all 6 of Lau's initial statements to police after his arrest, he never mentioned being personally insulted, his family being insulted, or being threatened with a knife by the victim. The prosecution argued that all of those details were late inventions created specifically for trial. Lau's violent response was also grossly disproportionate to any verbal insult or minor provocation that might have come from a 50-year-old woman. On November 12, 1999, Judicial Commissioner Amarjeet Singh found Lau Lee Peng guilty of murder under Section 300 of the Penal Code and sentenced him to death. In his judgment, the judge rejected the defense arguments on clear legal grounds. For the exception of sudden and grave provocation to apply, the law required 2 conditions to be satisfied: a subjective element, meaning the accused had actually lost self-control, and an objective element, meaning the provocation had to be serious enough that an ordinary person might react in a similar way. The judge found that the inability to locate a piece of paper containing an address or an ordinary verbal argument could not provoke a reasonable person to the point of killing someone with a cleaver. Lau's conduct also showed a controlled, coherent, and deliberate sequence of actions. He went into the kitchen and selected a cleaver, struck the victim 58 times, moved her body into the bathroom, forced her head into a basin of water in an apparent attempt to stage the scene, and then calmly gathered the heavy bags of coins before fleeing. The court concluded that Lau Lee Peng's only motive was to steal the money so that he could pay his gambling debts. Lau Lee Peng appealed to the Singapore Court of Appeal. On January 24, 2000, the court formally dismissed the appeal and upheld the death sentence. The Court of Appeal emphasized that the prosecution did not have to prove that the killing had been planned in advance. It was enough to establish that the accused intended to inflict the bodily injuries that were, in the ordinary course of nature, sufficient to cause death. In September 2000, Lau Lee Peng was taken to the gallows and executed by hanging at Changi Prison. The 1998 Tampines apartment murder left a significant legal and social legacy in Singapore. The judgment in Lau Lee Peng's case became an important precedent, frequently cited in Singapore's legal system and in other common law jurisdictions influenced by the Indian Penal Code. The case reinforced a firm legal boundary. Ordinary arguments or verbal insults cannot serve as a shield for extreme, lethal violence. The response must bear a reasonable degree of proportionality to the alleged provocation. The case also reflected a broader social warning about the security risks of openly discussing personal wealth and keeping large amounts of cash and coins at home. The combination of greed, gambling-driven financial desperation, and the victim's lack of caution ended in tragedy. The killing of Eng Yan also became a clear example of the power of criminal investigation built on forensic evidence. From the faint blood trail running along the 8th-floor corridor and down toward the parking lot, investigators were able to connect the attacker's injuries, the DNA evidence, and the movement of heavy bags of stolen coins. Every attempt to reconstruct the truth through fabricated statements, from the imaginary accomplice Meng to the later claim of insult and sudden provocation, collapsed when compared against the objective physical evidence and the logic of Lau's actions.